Hey YouTube, welcome to my channel. This is Tamara Rose Blodgett, the cheating carnivore no more. Like that rhyming thing, right? Let's dive right in. So you want to be a writer. I get that. Everybody wants to be a writer. And I think that there's a formula for writing. And if you're watching this video, first of all, I'd like to thank you for your guys' subscriptions and for your likes and your comments. I really appreciate the feedback because then I know kind of where I want to go with my channel. And though I did recently change my name to just keeping my real name as sort of the umbrella for the channel, I will be doing mainly nutrition, but if you guys noticed, I added expat life. That's short for expatriate. And I also added writing because of all the things that I do that are kind of interest to people, I think would be the fact that I make my living writing books. And I also make my living now through Fiverr as a ghostwriter and other related things. And then I live part of my life in Mazatlan, Mexico, which is about 1,000 miles south of the US border, Texas in that area. And it's directly across from La Paz on the Baja Peninsula, just for people's point of reference. And I think that's very unusual, and that I basically started a channel because it was a catharsis for me. I was doing a different way of eating for health-driven reasons. And then I decided I would go ahead and talk about what makes my life a little bit different than others. Everybody has their own life. It's like a fingerprint, right? We're all different. We all have things of interest. But a novelist, that's a real different income source. Most people aren't writers and make a living writing. And most people don't live a split lifestyle, which is what us expats call it when we're living in one spot in our native country, and then we also live in a foreign country for part of the time. I've always wanted to since I was 16. I've always wanted to live foreign. I didn't know how that would come about or where it would be, but I had an inkling that it'd be somewhere where it wasn't cold. But that's not always a prerequisite for me. I just like to explore and experience new things, and I figured that vicariously you guys could come along with me on my journey as I explore my nutrition, my health, resolving issues that I have, seeking answers for those I don't have yet, and also why I live somewhere else. So I wanted to go over So You Want to Be a Writer, which is the title of this video. I get a lot of clients on Fiverr that want to be writers, and they have tremendous ideas, insightful ideas, different ideas, ones I can create a story from, but they just don't have the vehicle for writing. And I'm not speaking to those people. I'm speaking to people that actually might have a set of wheels, as the expression goes, and they could write if they just had a few insightful guidelines to help them write. And I will not give away every single thing. I couldn't. It'd be impossible for me to impart everything it takes to be the writer that I've become or that you could become. But I did want to impart some things for you to consider if you are thinking about starting a career as a writer. And don't be thrown off balance because you think that the market's too saturated or that you could never do it or so forth and so on, or you don't have the money, you don't have the energy, you don't have the time. Where there's a will, there's a way. It's a super great cliche. I think the formula for writing is basically hard work. You've got to want it. You've got to be compelled to write. If you're not compelled to write, I would say it's kind of something that's more of an idealistic dream. If you're compelled to write, there's probably aptitude there. And I want to just delve into aptitude a little bit. You guys, let's dive deep. What's aptitude? Aptitude is when someone's naturally gifted at something, and if they work hard within the area of their aptitude, that's where the talent surfaces, in my opinion. That's how I see it as being. The first time I understood that I could write and that I had an aptitude, though I wouldn't have coined it that way, was when I was in 7th grade, and I had a social studies teacher that did an experiment in the room where he had a short story without an ending. And there was 30 of us in class, and he said, I want all of you to write in 2 pages or less the ending for this story, he said, and then turn it in anonymously. But then when you're selected, your story is selected by the peer group as the best ending, then we'll say who you were. So there was no way for anyone to know whose story was what or whatever, and we all wrote our 2 pages or less, and everybody had to write something. I bet some kids that had no aptitude just put down a bunch of garbage because they didn't want to fail that particular assignment. But I was like, I read the story, and I knew exactly how it was going to end. It was kind of creepy, and I liked that, and so I ended it. I even remember one of the passages I wrote was, an eerie light slid from underneath the door, and it was misty and luminescent and all this stuff, I said about it. And anyway, long story short, which is an absolute crock with me, mine was chosen. Mine was chosen as first. Nobody even came close. It doesn't mean that I'm so great. I always have to qualify those kind of comments because I might get a hating troll come in and say, you think you're all that. I couldn't be further from the truth. Am I confident? Do I know my skill set? Yes. Can I leverage it like a tool? Absolutely. Does that mean I think I'm great? No. I know the parameters in which I can do things. That's all it is. I mean, I have a certain confidence level based on skill sets that I've attempted, failed, and also succeeded by. When you attempt to do something, you gain confidence from doing it, and so therefore you become more expert at that task. It's really like 2 + 2 is 4, guys. It's rudimentary. All right. So that's when I realized that I had some kind of a gift. And what really hit it home for me was that it had been so easy. It wasn't an effort at all. It was like breathing to me. And I was like, well, it can't be a talent or a gift. It would be harder than this, I would think. It wasn't. It's what I was meant to do. It's what I was meant to do. In fact, I don't even feel like they're my ideas. I feel like something is channeling through me, the universe, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. And don't get weird either about religion, guys. I'm saying what my hypothesis is. I'm not sure that a person could be this prolific with this many different ideas and write decently and that quickly without some help from something. I feel like I've been given a gift and it's in this vehicle. That's how it's presented. It's nothing different than that. And it transcends the written word. I speak well. I am glib. I don't have any frustrations of, oh, gee, I wish I would have said this or that or whatever. I don't hunt for words. They are there. They are present for me to use at any given time. They're much more present now that I eat at the carnivore lifestyle. And I've put myself into ketosis most recently. And so my mind is fueled with the premium fuel, which is ketones. That's another video. I don't want to digress too much, right? So basically, I want to give you guys a little tidbit right now before you guys tune out and go, oh, there's too much information. Well, there is a lot of information here. And you can sift through it and decide what you want to adopt, if anything. But the first thing is that no one will see your work unless you write it. Nothing is more important than writing. I understood that early on. When the first month, all I made was $15.01 in May of 2011. Because, you have to wait 60 days through Amazon, and at that stage, that many years ago, the other retailers as well, they made you wait 60 days to get your royalties. And so that first month, I didn't even have a full month in March. I think I slipped in Death Whispers March 30th of 2011, something like that. My first published, released book. So in the end of May, I got, or the beginning of June, whatever it was, I got $15 for 2 months. And I just decided that it didn't matter how much money I made. I was meant to write. I already had the next book in my head. I had already written another book simultaneously with writing that one. And it was The Pearl Savage. And that came out that June. And then the second book, Death Speaks, to the first one I'd published, came out in that September. So I was quickly understanding that the stories were in my head. I just had to sit down and take an hour or two out to write a chapter, whatever that was going to take me. And so that is the premier, most important fact, is that you must write. Okay, the first chapter is always garbage, guys. I'm not talking quality. I mean, it's just difficult. The first chapter is always very difficult. And that's what you got to get down on paper. Once the first chapter's there, you can go back and revise it. And I wouldn't worry too much either about revision or rough drafts or outlines or anything like that. I do not use an outline. But now with AI, it's possible to create one. Chat GPT, You know, if one of my clients has to have an outline, I can generate one for them based on their information and get something that's kind of like broad swath, and it just kind of categorizes some stuff. And that's what I would do for clients. If I was consulting them, they would come and they say, I have this idea, and I say, great. And they put their ideas down. I'd go to Chat GPT and I have it create an outline. I come back and I say, hey, I AI'd this stuff. I said, what do you think about this? And generally they like it. I always tell my clients, you know, if I'm using AI, and it's for things like that. AI at this stage, it can capture some of the narrative voice that I have, but it's not in any way something I would use for my writing. In fact, I put in there, I said, this is what I can do in an hour. And it said, basically it said, oh, I can't replicate a book like that as fast as you can write it. I was like, oh, then I knew it just was never going to work in any capacity. But for me in that structure. But say if I want to give it my synopsis for one of my books and say, make this convertible, put keywords in there, do these things, do these, that and stuff in 100 characters or less or whatever I need, it'll generate that. I'll go through it and make it sound more like me and better, but it'll have some conversion in there. And that's the second thing I want to talk about. I don't know if there's anybody here listening that this applies to, but if you're a marketer or you're a graphic design person and you also have aptitude in writing, I highly suggest you get into this field. And I'll tell you why. It's because you don't have to hire out marketing, and you don't have to hire out book covers, okay? Those things are daunting. If you don't have that skill set, you're going to have to either hire it out or gain it, okay? And I don't want to make anybody feel bad or feel like it's insurmountable, but unless you have a very good story, you cannot not market. You must market, okay? You know, I had good stories and I could write them very quickly. I'm not saying they were great stories, but they were good stories. And I could write them quickly, and I got them pubbed early on, back when there weren't very many self-pubbed authors. I'm one of the oldies that's out there. There's a few people that predate me for sure, but not a ton. Not a ton. Some of us, there was a faction of us that started in 2011. There was a very small subset that started 2010 and before. Okay? Kitty Thomas. Who's the other one? Joe Conrath, I think. There's a few old timers that are out there, but there's a chunk of people that were 2011 like myself, then another big chunk in 2012, and then everybody after that I don't consider to be old timers. If you're past 2012, you're not old timers, but you could get in then. You could get in with writing a lot and writing well, and there was a few of us that could, and so we did. And I made hay while the sun shone. If I was to do it now, it would be very difficult for me to break in, especially considering I have barely mediocre marketing skills and mediocre, I consider to be graphic skills. They're okay. They're not bad. I'm skilled enough in the graphic making covers and everything that I can make my old covers look better and more relevant with not too much time and zero cost to me anymore. And that's another thing I want to get into. The very important thing is to write. And then once you get your book written, then it's time for you to revise it, which means you just start reading through your own work. You get rid of the typos. You clarify things that don't seem as clear that they need to have a fill-in. Like, I'm the queen of vague antecedents, which is where I put in it, that, and nobody knows what it or that is, but I do. So now I've taken to filling that in. I also clarify other things as I revise, and then I hand it off to my editor. Second thing, you cannot shirk this. I get clients all the time in Fiverr where they want me to format. That's one of my skill sets. I can make a Word doc and I can format it for upload in print or e-copy. So I'm selling that skill set right now on Fiverr, because it's a pain in the neck to learn. I actually coded my own template 13 years ago so I could do it myself, and it was absolutely fussy and not in the wheelhouse of what I readily understood. And I had to learn a skill set from the ground up, and it was tough. It's easier now, of course, because technology has advanced, but in those days, that's what I had to do. I'm still using that template because it's to my liking and I'm very familiar with it. And it was for free from openoffice.org, which I no longer recommend because it is not keeping up with Word. They used to keep up together, but about 2 years ago, Word jumped ahead and Org didn't follow it. So it's a free program. You know, back in the day when I needed free programs because we were a one-income family, and I was trying to do all the work myself so that I wouldn't drain anything from our single income. And that's why I did it. I'll be selling that template in the future. In the future, I will be providing online courses for all this as well. And I'll have links and I'll have detailed notes as part of my course and everything like that. So no one has to just listen and take notes and hope they got it all. But in this overview, I would just like to provide these things. So you need to write. You need to write pretty much every day at a minimum 5 times a week. You need to just set aside an hour to write. I write to music. Silence does not help me. However, I'm the minority. It could be that you need perfect silence and you need like a Zen spot, like a desk or something. I toss my laptop on top of my lap and I toss on very specific music that makes me feel a certain kind of vibe. And then I just start in on the story. Every time I start in, I'm not really sure what I'm gonna write for totally positive. I usually go back to the prior chapter if there is one, unless it's an intro chapter. And I will read through that, and then suddenly with the music and what I just wrote, I'm like, oh, I can do this, right? And that's how I do it. So write 5 times a week. Give yourself an hour each time. Music or no, give yourself a spot where you know you're going to do your writing. That's extremely important. And then the second thing is that when you get done with your novel, then you must get an editor to edit it. I have a really good editor. She started out as a fan, actually, and now she's editing for a lot of different authors, and she's very affordable. And I have an editing house I will recommend to people that I like, that I think they have competitive prices. And I liked, but I just got out of using them because it was a more formal structure than what I could commit to at that time, and it was expensive, and I was writing a lot, and all these things were happening. And so I got somebody that was more flexible for me. But these guys aren't inflexible, but they're big. They're a publishing, or they're an editing house, right? They can't always do everything for everyone. And I love them. I highly recommend them. And they also do proof and copy edit, line edit, whatever you need. That's critical. If you, like my Fiverr clients, they come to me and they say, oh, I want you to do a format. And what I find are a bunch of mistakes in their work. For instance, I had a client most recently, a lovely guy and great story, but he had misspelled sergeant and supremacist pervasively throughout the whole manuscript, like 80,000 words worth. And I was like, oh, wow, this doesn't work, actually. This doesn't work. And so what I did was a Command F or Command C, copied that, and then it's changed all variations of that spelling to the correct one. But I wasn't hired for editing or proofing for that work. That was actually something I wasn't supposed to do. But this is a guy, like I was talking about earlier, he had a set of wheels on him. He had already written his work. It was a decent book, I could tell, even with formatting, because there's some passive reading going on when you format something by scratch. And I just couldn't let it go having that mistake. So I asked his permission, could I fix that? And he said, yeah. I said, great. And so I fixed it and it was done. But let me tell you something. You can have a great story and you can misspell sergeant and supremacist and wreck the story, because the reader that is a natural editor, that's another person there, they'll see those mistakes. And every time they see that mistake, it takes them out of the storytelling. And you don't want that. That's preventable. Like, you finish your story, you revise it, you take out and clean up what you do see, then you give it to your editor. And then she goes through, or he, usually girls, but anyway, that person goes through and they correct what they see. Then you give it to the proofreader and they correct what that person didn't see. Then you go through the whole thing again and read it and make sure that it all is cohesive from beginning to end and that there aren't any typos or other things after you've inserted their updates, okay? And you just don't see your own stuff, guys. I can't tell you how many times I've done a homophone where the 2 words sound alike, like, I know who you are, or no, I'm not gonna do that. They're both no's, but one is K-N-O-W-S and the other one is N-O, the negative. So that's also something that can happen, for example. and you need to write every day, 5 days a week, set aside an hour to do that writing. And then you need to finish your book, and then you need to revise it and read it through, and then you need to turn it into a qualified editor. And then after the editor's done and you insert their updates, then you go ahead and send it to your proofreader. Cold eyes, guys, cold eyes. And then she, usually it's a girl. I have a street team of like 10 people, and one's a guy, and the rest are girls. Okay? Real unusual, okay? You send it to her, she looks it over, and she has, I can't tell you, I have D is my editor and S is my proofreader, and they do actually sometimes overlap on a few mistakes that they see, but almost always S, my proofreader, finds upwards of 8 things that my line editor missed because she's line editing. Okay. And I have weak areas in my writing. I like dangling participles. I'm not always great with capitalization. I'm a good speller, but not a great speller. So there's stuff. And that's in my aptitude. But I'm not a natural editor. I'm not. And you don't want those readers who are to come through and dissect your novel, because they will. They're not going to care that you're a great storyteller because they think who the heck they are. And they have a right to, because they're seeing mistakes you let go through. You don't want those natural editors that they're part of the reason they're reading is because they're drawn to reading because they want to see words, and their mind is always trying to make sense of all the rules being followed because that's who they are, okay? Just like I'm a storyteller, that's who I am, okay? I can write the story and I give it to people that are natural editors who I pay to edit my stories because they have the aptitude. In fact, my proofreader gal, S, she's like, it's just like the mistakes just float to the surface. She says, they're right there. It's like they got a blinking sign on. I'm like, yep, that's how writing is to me too. I just sit down and the words are there for me to write. And then she comes in and she sees the mistakes. It's fantastic. It's a wonderful collaboration. So writing, be consistent, finish the novel. No one can purchase it. No one can read it unless you finish it. It's just a dream. Otherwise, you're not an author till it's done. Then get it edited, okay? And then there's things beyond that where you have to make choices. Once you got your Word doc or your OpenOffice.org novel done and edited and proofed, then it's time for you to decide how you're going to market it. But before you even do that, you've got to format it. What is formatting? Formatting is when you take the Word doc and you get it into an electronic file that can then be uploaded to retailers. Who are those retailers? We have Amazon, Nook, Google Play, Kobo, Apple, and D2D, which used to be Smashwords, but D2D, digital to digital, then bought Smashwords. Smashwords is an aggregator that takes your file and it throws it out to a bunch of different smaller retailers, such as Scribed, which is, I think, Everend now, and Overdrive, and Palace Marketplace, and just a lot of like really small retailers. And you don't make a lot of money at those, but what it does is it gets your book to the widest audience possible. Some people don't buy their books at Amazon. They don't. Some people are just like Nook people. That's why for Nook, when I do a paperback for Amazon, I also do a paperback with an ISBN specific number just for Nook. And it says Nook Paperback Edition, and then it has a separate ISBN number I can get from Nook. So I'm wide now. What does that mean? Wide means I'm available. My catalog of books is available everywhere in the world at all retailers. I'm not exclusive to anybody. Now, there is a program on Amazon called Kindle Unlimited, and us in the know, and even, readers and stuff too, call it KU. And KU pays the author per borrow, per page read, and then also you can get buys. So some people, they can see your book and they'll buy your book and pay the $3 or whatever. And then somebody that's a KU subscriber, which I think is like $12 a month now. It used to be $10, but I think it's like $12 now. Anyway, with their subscription, they can grab your book on and borrow it and read it as part of a queue of like 10 books. And then if they get more than 10 books, then they have to decide which book they want to return to read yours. I highly recommend Kindle Unlimited and KU for the first 90 days. You have to keep refreshing your exclusivity with them every 90 days or you're out of the program. But once you check mark the box that, yeah, I do want to be in KU, it's automatically check marked unless you go back in there and remember to uncheck mark it, which shouldn't be too hard for most people. For someone like myself who has over 75 books now, I would have to be very diligent. And so I only have KU on my foreign translations, which pertain only to the e-copies. They don't pertain to audio or paperback. Those formats can be anywhere, but as far as the e-copy goes, I'm exclusive to Amazon for my foreign translations, but I am not exclusive with my English translations. I'm everywhere with those. But I would suggest as a new author that you go on Amazon with your book and put it in KU for that first 90 days. And then after that, put your feet in the water to get your toe wet, right? And get that help from the algorithm of Amazon to surface your title, because they surface KU titles harder than they do ones that are wide. That's just the way it is. And if you can get that and maybe some reviews and some initial sales and buzz, then you can go wide, okay? And it also only makes you have to go to Amazon and upload at that one retailer in the beginning and get the hang of it. Get your feet wet, get a little practice in. It's just the way to go. And it's very exciting to see page reads and to see how many people read through. And then if you were to write another book, like as soon as you publish your first book, you should already have been writing your second book while the first book's in rough with the editor. You go ahead and start on the second book. Don't mess around. It doesn't matter. If you can't get a whole chapter done, in a day, you just keep working until the chapter is done. Maybe you can only get a chapter done, once a week. Where does that put you? Well, if you're writing a 60,000 word work, which is around 300 pages or so, and it's the sweet spot right now, most people are writing about 60,000 unless they're doing high fantasy or involved to sci-fi, okay? And what they're doing is that if it's 60,000 words, you're looking at about 30 chapters. If you're writing 1,800 to 2,000 words at a session. So if you've got 30 chapters, that means you can get 4 chapters done a month, and then you just do the math, okay? You could have a novel written at the click of every 6 to 8 months, depending on how much you could get done. It's still getting the book done in less than a year, right? So that's better than no writing. Just get in there and get after it. And the reason I stress the consistency is because if you're not consistent, you start to lose the grasp on the characters and the vibe for the story. Like say you only feel like you can get a chapter done once a month and you just read the chapter and do the chapter over 30 days. That's extremely slow. Like that's going to make you lose the momentum, lose the vibe, lose the zen. I highly recommend doing at least a chapter a week, because then the story keeps going. It's in your mind. Your mind ruminates all the time on stories. And sometimes I'll wake up with an idea in mind for a new story, and I don't even know why that happened. I think I just slapped in my mind is still ruminating subconsciously. And that's where it's at. So this is a part one. I can't get in everything I want to get in one go. Like this is all I've got for now. But stay tuned for next month, because I'm going to try to do a writer's video each month, so that one of my videos is not a nutrition video, and then also to impart something that might be of interest to people. People are very curious about my job. For me, it's just my job now. It'll be 13 years next month. It's just something that I make my living at, and I really enjoy doing. There's parts of my job I don't love as much, for sure. Part of that's the uncertainty of the market, actually. But for the most part, I just love my job. And I want you guys to love it too, if you guys are writers. And I wanted to offer some hope. And let me know if you guys think you would buy one of my online courses, because I'm gonna seg them up pretty deliberately. You know, one for formatting and one for cover design, and one that sells just my template and with instructions on how to use it and how to input stuff and different things like that. I think it's going to be kind of great. I'm excited about doing it. I'm not going to start probably until I return to the States after May, and May's crazy, so it might be June. But I'll have my own little YouTube studio too, because we have a little room that doesn't have a window. It's like a storage room, and I'm really excited about using that. But it'll be a little bit of a mess until I get that sorted. But anyhow, let me know what your guys' thoughts are. Do you want to become a writer? Has anything I've said here resonate with you? Because right now we're on, you need to write, you need to edit, and now I've touched on formatting, but I haven't delved deep. And on our next episode for writing, I will delve deep into formatting and what that would take, and kind of how much it costs to format a book that you've finished. Anyway, love you guys, and thanks for watching. And I know this is different than my carnivore lifestyle videos, but I wanted to get something in now because I'm still working with my iodine stuff and my thyroid, and I don't have enough information yet, but by next week I should have more. And my kids are coming to visit us too. So I wanted to get something out and be timely. Anyhow, love you guys. Thanks for watching.